Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Rhys Morgan and Robert West, or as you know them, Morgan and West. They are an incredible magic duo, and they're amazing. They've been on Penn & Teller's Fool Us twice. They are touring performers with multiple shows. You're going to learn a lot more about that in the episode, but they're just brilliant, and this was an action-packed episode. Not only do they have so much to say, speak incredibly quickly, but when one of them stops talking, the other one starts talking again. So there's literally non-stop knowledge for a straight hour. You're going to love this. You're going to learn about scripting. You're going to learn about working together as a duo act. You're going to learn about how to write shows, how to edit your shows. You're going to learn about so much creativity, so much. They are really, really incredible, and you're going to love it. So here it is, a wonderful episode with the two and only Morgan and West. Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and we are here with, I like to say the one and only, but this time it's the two and only Morgan and West. How are you guys?
Hello.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. How are you?
I am doing very well and super excited to chat with you. You know, I've loved some of your TV spots recently.
Just some of them.
Yeah, some of them. and I really enjoyed seeing you at Magi Fest. So I knew that I had to chat with you guys and dig a little deeper into how you went from being just Rhys and Robert to the Mr. Morgan and Mr. West. So let's trace that journey. How did you both get started in magic?
It's not the usual one. We didn't get a Paul Daniels magic kit when we were young. I was saying that I did get a Paul Daniels magic kit when I was about 6, but practicing was awful, so I didn't do anything. We both met at university doing student theatre. We weren't, our degrees are physics and chemistry, but we did a lot of student theatre together. And when we were about 20, we both discovered that we'd very recently, within like the last couple of weeks, independently started playing around with card tricks. And so sort of egged each other on with, oh, this week I've learned how to do the double lift. What have you learned? Well, I've learned how to do the glide, that classic move that everyone uses.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to use that for the rest of my professional repertoire.
And sort of just egged each other on. And we were in the habit of doing shows together. We directed and produced and acted in a lot of different types of shows together, and we wrote a few things together. And so it just naturally came to occur that once we'd been learning magic for, I don't know, 6 months maybe?
Yeah.
We thought, well, how hard can it be to put on a show as a double
stage show?
Let's do it. Turns out quite hard.
Very hard. That show sucked.
That was a terrible show. But
at the time, we were very proud of it. At the time, we were very proud of it, although that show did literally involve us showing two friends of ours like a week before it went up.
3 days before it went up.
3 days before it went up, and them saying, it's terrible, and we rewrote it the next day.
Oh, man.
Completely changed everything.
Yeah. So that was
it was still terrible, but
less terrible.
Less terrible.
It wasn't as terrible. It's one of those things where the only way you get better at these things is by doing it. No one, not even the greatest performers, magicians, actors, what have you, write a thing and
go, well, that's perfect.
First time off the bat.
Nailed it.
Just doesn't work like that. Just never works like that.
Obviously, your stage interaction with each other has greatly developed, but how long were you guys friends and really bouncing ideas off of each other before this first jump at it?
So we met in the April of 2006, and we first did a stage show together as magicians. We weren't called Morgan and West at the time, but as magicians in October 2008.
Yeah, so basically we had
a year and a half of friendship.
Yeah, a year and a half of friendship and of doing things. And in the time in between the magic show and meeting, we did like a couple of Terry Pratchett shows. We did an Inspector Calls.
We wrote a musical together.
We did an improv show.
We did all sorts of things. All sorts.
But we weren't always on stage as a double act. So like we often would be, one of us would have directed it, or one of us would be acting in it, or like I did lighting for Rhys at some point. And
just all sorts of different things, really.
Yeah, so it's not like we spent years working and then we started doing magic together and did like 3 gigs and then went, that's a show.
Yeah, so we started out doing close-up as everyone does.
Yeah.
We used to do close-up at the university sort of parties and balls in exchange for a free ticket back when that meant a lot.
Yeah.
From my research, you guys don't like doing that anymore.
No, gosh.
No, I think close-up is the worst environment for magic.
As in professional close-up?
I think that there are 2 types of close-up magic. There is close-up magic that magicians do for magicians and close-up magic that magicians do for the public. And close-up magic that magicians do for magicians, where you're sat there and you've got a mat and you've got 2 people either side of a table and you're doing... That's great.
The kind of stuff that you get in the close-up room.
In the close-up room, the magic castle.
That sort of thing.
That's great, and the stuff that you see at conventions. But that's not the reality of actually most actual close-up magic. Most actual close-up magic is interrupting someone at a drinks reception or interrupting someone in a meal. And the two things are such a different environment, and we are very much big believers in that magic is theatre and it's like a proper performative thing. And the idea of doing that and trying to interrupt someone else's space and someone else's time
and experience of
the experience of what they're doing. They're going, I'm having a meal, I'm having a chat with my friend, and just going, sorry, I'm just going to butt into your space and show you a thing for a second. That's a really weird environment to try and do magic.
So let's move on. I've got a load of different questions here. One thing that's been really interesting to me is the journey of magicians into magic and into performing. And it seems like you guys were not very long in the world of magic before you started really giving it a go on stage. Do you think that's had an effect on like not spending years tiddling around with tricks you don't need and really getting into the stuff that you do need? Talk to me about how that's played a role.
So I think the thing is that our attitude is that we were performers before we were magicians, and we did Amdram and stuff and student theatre and that. And so our thing was, well, if there's a thing you want to do, be it an improv show or a musical or a magic show, the way you get good at it is by doing it.
Well, that's not to say that you don't have to do some research for it. You can't just sort of pick it up out of nothing and sort of go for it. But there is a level of research you need, but you can just get going, really.
Yeah, and again, one of the pervasive myths of the magic industry is the idea that, like, there's a certain amount of time you need to spend.
Yeah, you need like 10 years of double lifts before you can...
Exactly, yeah, and the idea that after 10 years practicing in your bedroom, you'll suddenly be a good stage performer because you'll have learned so many cards. It's the thing of being like, but they're literally different skills.
Right.
It's the thing of being like, if you were to say, using a cooking analogy, it doesn't matter how much time you spend chopping carrots, it doesn't make you a better baker. And being a stage performer is not the same as being a card mechanic. And I think a lot of people flatter themselves with, well, what I'm doing, I'm not wasting my life. I'm not just knobbing about in my bedroom with a deck of cards. What I'm doing is preparing for the time at which I will be good enough to take to the stage. And it's, I think, I've been like, and obviously, if you want to just knob around your room and do card tricks, great. I used to love doing that. But the thing is that I think we often lie to ourselves as magicians and say that they're doing that in preparation for some big stage show they're going to do one day or some amazing thing they're going to create one day. When I was like, the people that create amazing work aren't the people that think about them creating amazing work they can create one day. The people that create amazing work are the people that try and create it. And you'll have this dream and you won't realize that dream for a long time, but the thing you make will be a version of that, rather than going, well, I'm just going to do Divernon material, but one day I'll be an amazing stage performer, but for some reason I need to know these 10 card tricks backwards first.
And also, I think it feeds into something that we both have difficulty with, which is which a lot of magicians seem to like the idea of, is the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of experience, which is nonsense. It's a really pithy line for a book, but it's exactly the same as 5 pieces of fruit and veg a day.
It's just a made-up number that someone made up once. It doesn't mean anything.
It absolutely doesn't mean anything, because to be excellent at something, you need to be excellent at it. That doesn't mean that you've, at hour 9,999, to be perfectly facetious about it, if you're rubbish, does then hour to hour, is that when you tick over into, oh my God, I'm now great at this?
And even if there was an amount of time you need to do something, an amount of experience, the problem is that you can spend 10,000 hours practicing being terrible at something.
I've been sleeping and driving for 10,000 hours in my life, and I still suck at both of them. So
I'm terrible at sleeping, and I've done it most nights of my life, and I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, but again, I think it's that thing of sometimes I think we flatter ourselves with the easy way out of why you haven't done more is the fact that you're somehow building to something.
I've had some people on one of the shows that I produce ask to not be introduced by the number of years that they've been in magic, because people say, like, this guy's been performing for 25 years and he sucks. And they're like, what were you doing for all 25 years? It was, well, 19 of them I was in my bedroom fiddling around with a deck of cards, and then I finally got out on the stage.
You see it a lot when people that say, this guy's been doing magic since he was 8 years old. And I was like, I don't think that's a good thing. The skills that are inherent to magic are things that do not lend themselves naturally to children. And so most people that were magicians from a young age learned a bunch of bad habits, and then had to unlearn them when they became an adult. Whereas if you start as an adult and you start late, you probably won't develop those habits.
Yeah, you don't have to go through that whole learn a trillion trick stage and then finally realize that you're doing something else entirely. And magic is so broad that sometimes those things don't even translate. Like stage direction is probably a more impactful thing for a stage performer to learn than another card trick.
In the way that as well, sort of like interpersonal skills and relatability is really, really important, because the baseline of a magic trick is, does this thing on the face of it appear to be impossible? And if that's a big tick, that's great, but that is the baseline.
And there's plenty of magic tricks, and there's plenty of people that show us. I mean, and obviously we're, magicians, so we know how magic tricks are done. But when they show us a magic trick and think, "What do you think?" Whether or not I know how it's done, often my response to a magic trick that someone shows me is, "I don't care, and I don't like you." You know what I mean? Like, sort of, as in, I literally don't care what happened with the cards, because I don't care.
So in fact, actually, at Magifest, we were there was another chap there, a chap called Peter Clifford, who's a very good friend of ours, and he's an actor himself and a magician, and he's directed one of Darren Brown's stage shows, and he did a lot of the direction work on David Blaine's stage show. And we were in the pizza place across the road because it was the only place you could get food, it turned out.
Yeah.
And it was just the three of us, and one of the waitresses came up, and obviously I think magicians had been in and out of that pizza place for the last 3 days solid.
Yeah.
And she just said, like, "Can you show us a trick?" And Peter dutifully obliged, and it was one of the best card tricks I have ever seen, quite genuinely.
And literally, he was doing like ambitious card and
card
to mouth and stuff like that. But it's just a thing of, and because Peter has directed our shows and we've known him a long time, but I think of being like, oh, the difference for us between a good magic trick and a bad magic trick isn't the trick, it's the performer. And everyone thinks they know that, but like Peter has such an incredible warmth as a performer that you just kind of go, I really like this guy and I enjoy the fact thing. And like a lot of people, I think, when they ask questions on forums, or they're being like, what do you do about people that are like difficult spectators, or people are trying to bust you and stuff? And I think that often if you have people doing that, it's because you're not very likable.
You've created a confrontational situation. Magic is inherently confrontational because it is, I have a thing here that I know how to do it, because obviously the way I am doing it is not I have a secret power. It is I have learned a secret trick and I'm not going to tell you what that is. And now I'm going to expect you to enjoy this. Yeah. And that's a difficult situation to put into as someone watching a magic trick.
You guys find a really creative way to solve that problem with a few things, and I'll just touch on some of them, and then I'd love to hear you guys, your take on it. But one of the first things that I think makes it less confrontational is the characters. So you're not a modern person that someone is trying to outwit and be smarter than and whatever. You come out with characters. It's obviously BS, like time travelers, all that stuff. They know that that's not true. And the shtick of it all makes it less confrontational because it's not a person that you're interacting with, it's a character. And then the last thing I'll say about that before I want you guys to talk about it is in one of your effects in the dropping the coins in the glass, forgive me for not knowing the name.
It doesn't have one.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Then I nailed it. It escalates from believable to not believable to allow people this like magic experience of not trying to be like you and I versus each other, but you and I with each other. We're not trying to outsmart you. This is silly. This is ridiculous. As true that it is. Same as the senses where you're smelling what people are thinking or had for breakfast and tasting and stuff like that. Can you touch a little bit about how that kind of solves or makes its way around that confrontational element?
I mean, honestly, it's really nice to hear you say all of those things, because those are all of the points that we talk about whenever we're asked to talk about this sort of thing, that a character immediately lets your audience know that you know it's not real.
And obviously for us, the way we often put it is that if you go up to someone and say, hey, my name's Jonah, I want to show you a card trick, it's really cool, blah, 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 take a card, blah, 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 and then go, boof, the card's in my shoe. What you've done there is you've presented yourself as a real person having a real conversation with someone, and they've gone along with that because people do, because that's how social interaction works. And then at some point they go, oh, well, at some point this guy lied to me, and at some point he's deceived me and tricked me, and I kind of can't see the line between that conversation and that thing. And that's why people go, and they look for funny moves and try to bust you and stuff. Whereas when you walk out on stage, or even when we do very rarely do close up, we still do it in character and we still do it in costume. And, we're like, hello, I'm Rhys Morgan, we're together with Morgan West, magicians, time travelers.
All around spiffing chaps.
And if you say
the whole stick,
even in close up, and you say, hi, we're time travelers, and they go, no, you're not. But not in a bad way, but as in like, no one is turning to their friend and saying, I don't think they really are. They just go, okay, yeah, sure, you're time travelers. But what they're doing there is they're going, oh, okay, sure, this is a fun thing we're going to play at, and it's going to be fun. So when I go take a card, put it back, boosh, it's in my shoe, they go, what a fun little thing that was. They've swallowed a big lie, and it's that thing of, there's a lovely quote, I never remember who said it, of the difference between an actor and a magician is that a magician tells lies in the real world, whereas an actor tells the truth in a fake world.
If you can create that fake world, it means that the horrible, horrible lies we all have to tell as magicians,
you can deliver as truth
quite easily.
And the thing, like the reason people often feel awkward doing magic moves or saying magic words or doing anything that seems overly sincere when doing a magic trick is because they know deep down it doesn't do anything. And you're saying to the audience, look, I know this doesn't do anything, you know it doesn't do anything, but I'm kind of doing it because I feel like I have to. Whereas if you're like, no, I have to do this, and you really believe that, then the audience aren't going to think you're an idiot. They're just going to think, oh, you're doing a fun bit for me.
It's funny, I was talking to a friend about something very similar to this a couple of nights ago. The two of us, we play a lot of board games, and I'm dreadful at any board game that requires me to lie, like actively bad.
Yeah, it's really bad.
You can just see, like we play a lot of sort of like One Night Ultimate Werewolf and that sort of thing, and you can just tell if I'm lying. And it's funny because my friends have worked out they can tell if I'm lying, but that doesn't mean they can tell if I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
And a friend was saying to me, but yet, when you're doing magic, you're lying all the time on stage, and you don't pull this weird face that you pull. And I was like, she's like, is it because you've got this amazing double bluff, and one day you're going to completely rinse us all at this game? I was like, no. It's because on stage,
it's not a lie.
It's not a lie.
Right. You are that character on stage.
I believe it on stage.
Yeah, on stage, Mr. Morgan really can hear the difference between the coins or the driving license or the bank card or whatever. Like,
and there are functional things that have to happen. Like Mr. West has to be speaking to me in a certain way for me to be able to hear them. But the method itself is kind of part of the lie. And if you have to do a certain move, that's just because that's part of the magical way you have to wiggle your fingers to make the incantation work. Kind of thing, And
I think one of the things I think people find alienating about an act like ours, not as in to watch it, but as in to imagine doing something like it, is they go, but I don't want to dress up like an idiot. And I think the thing is that you can be a character who is a character act from the modern era. You don't have to be an alien or a time traveler or a dragon.
Chris Cox is a very good example of this. He's a chap from the UK who's currently touring with the Illusionists in various ways, shapes and forms. And he essentially plays a character where his character is a big, geeky, slightly gangly, awkward, over-the-top, frenetic man-child is essentially what it comes down to.
And that's not what he's like in real life.
And he's not like that at all in real life. It just means that, and he's got a thing where like he reads someone's mind by getting them to drink some water and they spit back into the water and then he drinks the bottle and he tells them their thought and stuff like that. And it all just works because it's just commitment to the role.
Yeah.
It's just buying into it.
If you believe it, and again, I think that people in magic, I think we often lie to ourselves about how much the audience actually believe. And mind readers especially, I think, lie to themselves about how much the audience are buying into. But if you believe it, the audience will, quote unquote, believe it.
Do you think the ridiculousness or the silliness of the plots of the effect have an effect on that same experience?
I think they have an effect, but it's not necessary.
You don't need to. So we like to do stupid things because
we tried serious years and years and years ago. We're just not very good at it.
So the senses trick we do, which it's called intrasensory perception. That's one of those weird titles where the audience never hear the name of the trick. We never say this, but we used to have a line about how extrasensory perception is perception beyond your senses, and our senses trick is perception within your senses. So we call it intrasensory or RSP. That trick, because what is essentially, and it's in the Tripole tricks, which is in the book, plug, but because that trick is 5 very strong, very hard-hitting pieces of mentalism, we could use that trick and that method to make Reese look like an absolute god.
Right.
But that's not fun to watch. It's not fun to watch someone be like, anything you think of or can do or have done, I can tell you, and without any effort or try. That's boring. Whereas we can also make that trick about Reese smelling someone's breath to tell them what they like. He smells someone's breath to tell them what they had for breakfast. And he could read their mind and say, think of it, was it this? But he doesn't. He smells their breath. And he smells their breath by getting them to blow into a long rubber tube that he has stuck up his nose. And in doing that, what we're doing is Reese is making an arse of himself
but in a way that is entirely congruent with the trick and what we need to happen for the trick.
At no point do we say, obviously, he doesn't need to do this. Like, we commit to it.
It just happens to be stupid at the same time. And that's just...
And is it just because that's more fun to do, or is there any, like...
It's more entertaining. It's more entertaining. For a start, that routine is like almost 15 minutes long.
So you need
15 minutes of mentalism is dry.
Yeah, it's
hard.
Sure,
you can put in, like, jokes, but our thing is that we don't write jokes, we write humour. And so I don't need to write jokes because the act of me putting a giant clothes peg on Reese's nose is funny in itself.
It's situationally funny.
Yeah, it's situationally funny. It's like, rather than trying to write little jokes and barbs and things like that, which can become just a lot of you talking on stage and trying to get a response. We're very quiet a lot in our performances because often we're about to do something funny.
But that's not to say that that's a necessary part of the deception of magic. Like, you look at a lot of routines that, for example, Penn and Teller do, and there's a lot of them that don't really have a lot of humour in them.
No, they're just magical or beautiful or terrible, but not terrible in a bad way. Terrible as in kind of dark or gore.
What the key is something to keep the audience interested, because the moment of magic in any magic trick is so fleeting that unless the trick is 10 seconds long, you got to have something else going on.
And if you imagine any, and again, this especially goes for any long routine, like a long mentalism routine, be like, if you took the end off this routine and removed the reveal, would it still be watchable? And obviously it wouldn't make sense, but the point is that we used to think of our shows in terms of when it comes to like pricing our shows. Say our show is an hour long and is $12 for a ticket. Really what you're saying is that every dollar buys you 5 minutes of the show. So
after 5 minutes, you've paid $1 to get in, and after 5 minutes
they say get out or pay another $1.
Do you pay that $1?
Right. And that's fine if your first trick is a really big flashy bam 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 bam, I appeared a donkey or a girl or whatever. Like, great, and people go, great, I want to see what it does next. But if you then launch into a 6-minute routine
where the first 5 minutes of it is just chat.
It's just chat, and you stand there and think of a thing and write it down and fold it up and blah 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 and NLP and these 5 symbols mean blah. If that 5 minutes is boring, some people are going to pay the $1 because they're like, well, I've committed now, so I want to see where this is going. But some people are going to be like, actually, you know what? I know he's going to get it right. So
I'll cash out here.
I've performed in many good and awful venues, as I'm sure you have. And one venue that I was lucky to perform in was very conducive to people walking out. And that was really helpful into learning exactly what it is that you're saying, which is that they go, you know what? Not worth the next $1. Like, let me go do something else.
One of the things I think that we often when we have venues like that where we're doing a festival or something, so it is very much a walk in, walk out kind of thing. Your act is good. Not if it doesn't need to gather huge numbers of people. We're not street performers. We don't need to build a huge crowd at the start. I know our act is good if everyone that's there at the start stays. If they're like, oh, actually, there are other things I could do at this festival or whatever, but I'm going to sit here and carry on watching this because I want to see what happens next.
Because it's funny, kind of our little analogy doesn't work for street performers, because street performers don't have a buy-in. Street performers is a buyout at the end.
Right.
It's all about gathering the largest crowd so that you can play the percentages and try and get the most money out of the 10% of people that are going to leave a hat for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's actually a different game.
Let's talk a little bit about how you work together and how you're able to bring an idea to stage. It's a hard enough thing to do as one person. How do you do it as a duo?
It's easier as a duo.
It's so much easier as a duo. I cannot understand how anyone does it solo.
No, I wouldn't do it solo. I would have by now I'd have spent the last 10 years just going, I should probably write that first trick.
What happens that makes it so easy?
Basically, you know that thing when you're chatting with someone, you come up with an idea for a routine, and you go, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Now, if you're on your own, you go, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Yes, it probably would. Whereas we go, wouldn't it be cool to do this?
And then the other person goes, oh, yes, but hang on. How about if instead of X, Y, Z, if you replace X with A? Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Hang on a second. So, like, here's a real example of this. We've been talking for years about, because we're sort of 19th century time travelers, we should do a seance at some point. And we were talking around ideas of being like wanting to do a seance and wanting to do some really cool seance stuff and wanting to make it very theatrical and staged.
And very kind of like down the line, straight Victorian seance.
But we're like, but ethically, I have trouble with that, because even if you say, or we're just going to contact a generic ghost, some people in the room might believe it, and I don't want to proliferate the idea of that contacting ghosts is real. So we're like, okay, let's do a seance for a fictional person. And we were discussing that for a bit, and like, do we do like a seance for Sherlock Holmes or someone? And then in talking about that, Reese said,
hang on, how about, so we're time travelers, right?
Yeah.
So that means that one of us could like retire in the future, but then go back to the past for their retirement, like say go back to like 1963 or something, which means that they would die in like 1971 maybe, which means that in 2020 they would be dead, but they're not dead because they're here as well. But the older, the aged version of them is dead, which
means that if ghosts exist, that your ghost is present at the same time that you are, which means that we can do a seance where Mr. West is both the medium and the ghost.
And immediately you go, well, this is a proper Victorian seance. There's a fun bit at the beginning with diagrams and kind of explanation cards. They're kind of like, now, hang on, bear with us.
Let us explain what's going on here.
Yeah. And all that sort of stuff. But everyone knows that it's entirely embedded in the character thing that we were talking about earlier. Everyone knows it's fake. And from that point on, we don't have to acknowledge that it's fake. We can be as real and as genuine as we like with it.
And once you come up with that idea, then it's then just fun to come up with other ideas and going, oh, and you can do things like, well, okay, we know the character of Mr. West really well because we write for him. So I know I know the kind of character traits that character would have. So how about rather than having a poltergeisty thing where, like a spirit cabinet thing where you put something in the spirit cabinet and close the door and they mess it up.
Like Mr. West is really down the line. He's quite fastidious. So what about if the spirit of Mr. West tidies stuff up? So you do a reverse spirit cabinet like that where you chuck a bunch of stuff in, close the curtain, open the curtain, it's now in a neat little pile, possibly even like alphabetized and stuff like that.
Or like we have a jar full of beads and they're all mixed up and then you close the curtain and open it and they're all sorted into colours. And ideas like that come from, again, that sense of going, well, by talking about this and having ideas and throwing ideas back and forth, I'm thinking about it all the time, just constantly thinking about stuff. And when we're driving to a gig in the van, which might be hours and hours and hours, we just talk, or when we're setting up a show, we just talk about ideas and play with ideas. And most ideas will never go anywhere. But sometimes you hit on something and go, oh, write that down, put it in your phone, whatever. And it's that back and forth that makes you write stuff.
It's kind of like instead of somebody being an author, it's like a writer's room.
Yeah, it's like a writer's room, absolutely. And at the same time, it's like constantly having an editor there with you.
Because also you can spot bad ideas a mile off. Because it's very, very easy to, when you come up with an idea, get wedded to that idea very, very quickly. And it takes a lot, I think, to push you away from that idea. And often the first step in pushing away from that idea is the other one of the duo going, really? That sounds dreadful. Right.
Or just going, I feel weird about that for some reason. And I honestly think that open discussion like that is a very important part of the writing process. And I think a lot of people's magic would be better if they just had to justify everything to someone else.
And it's got to be to someone that you trust and respect. And
not just like some randomer at the bus stop.
Yeah, you have to trust and respect them. And thankfully, I trust Rob, so everything's fine.
That was sort of for what it takes to bring stuff to the stage. I assume scripting works very similar for you guys.
Scripting is we talk about an idea, we knock it back and forth and we discuss it until it hits a point where, and we traditionally say, one of us goes, okay, I can write it. Realistically, until Rob goes, okay, I think I can write it. He goes away and writes it. He puts it in front of me and I look at it and I go, right, okay, this bit here, I think we need to trim back on this. This bit here, I think we need to say less. And a script will start as a 10, 15-page script. And between the two of us, then we will find new jokes and edit it. And then initially sort of when writing it, we will edit that 10, 15 pages down into sort of like 6 to 10 pages. And then on stage, inevitably, more stuff will be cut when we realise that we've given ourselves far too much to say.
Yeah, we often go, you know what? This bit is boring. We could just skip it.
Because again, I think writing scripts is a really valuable thing to do and a really good thing to do. But there is a big, big difference to something being interesting or funny or clever to read and be performed.
And the thing
which is a skill that playwrights have, and we're not playwrights.
Yeah, and the thing we often do and edit on stage as we go, not literally live on stage, but we'll do a show and then come off stage and go, that bit is too long. Is what we'll do is, so we're quite good at wordplay and funny jokes and stuff. And so we're quite good at going, oh, here's a funny thing, and here's a funny thing, and then we go, oh, hang on, what we've done there is 3 silly bits of wordplay or silly jokes. The lead up to this trick or this science bit, whatever show we're doing, has 3 silly bits at the start. And it kind of feels like by the time you get to the third one, it's not that the third one isn't funny, but it feels like the trick is going nowhere. So you should pick the best one and just do that one. Actually, Reese said something the other day, which I think is really nice, which is a very fair thing of doing it, is I'm very good at writing on the page and Reese is very good at writing on the stage, as it were, in that there's a lot of stuff in our shows which Reese made up on the spot.
And there's also a huge amount of stuff and huge amount of the really interesting back and forth and clever wordplay and sort of really, really tightly written jokes are stuff that Rob has just come up with and comes up with in vast streams of it, to the point where I'm kind of like, oh, bloody hell. There's a lot going on here.
And also like little things you discover all the time. So that we're touring a science show at the moment, and there's a bit that we kind of have naturally found, which is literally just a bit of physical staging in the Eileen Clock.
Yeah.
Where I'd be like, a thing happens and the liquid turns black in our science show, and goes, oh, it went black or whatever. And I go, and what does that tell us? And Reese says, oh, well, the black liquid takes a long time to make. And I go, well, why did it go black so quickly? And he goes, oh, it's made very quickly. Then why did it take such a long time to make? And that repetition of the lines back and forth to each other is written. But on stage, what we have found, the way we deliver them, I mimic the hand actions and the poses that Reese is doing.
Right.
And we have found that rhythm on stage. So that's a nice piece of writing on the page. And then we've learned it, done it on stage. And then as we've been doing it on stage, we've found the best way of delivering it and things we can do as we deliver it. To blow one's own trumpet, the things we do very well is really tightly done stuff, because we gig so much that we get to rehearse it a lot. And so people will be like, God, I can't believe that. So it's like, we've done it a million times. And it's that mixture of, well-written stuff and well-edited stuff and deciding what works and what doesn't. And then when you've got that stuff, building stuff on top of it, there are reliable laughs that we get at points of our show that are not in the script. So there's a bit in the census trick where we've blindfolded Reese and I've put handkerchiefs in his ears and and we're doing the back to the smell thing. I get someone like you on that, like I asked you to write down what you had for breakfast, and I stick a rubber tube up Reese's nose, and then I look at the other end of the tube and then really slowly turn my head to look at the person on stage with me. And that's not written in the script, but that's a reliable laugh. And it's very clear for the audience. We're going, here's a story, here's a tube, one ends up his nose, he's going to smell her breath, he's going to smell something. Where's the other end going?
Does it feel like the first time that you bring a trick to the stage, it's kind of like a semi version of improv versus, the later times when you already have all these bits memorized? Usually
the first time we bring it is written, but at the same time,
I can't learn script. So
Reese is very bad at learning script, so it's always a vague version of it. And also, you very quickly cut things and add things and realise that things aren't clear. But also, we've had shows before where in the first run of the show, at like the Edinburgh Fringe or something, when we're doing 25 shows in a row, we've realised stuff really isn't working and we've had to edit like day to day. And we would be walking to the venue going, okay, rather than doing the sub-drunk in the middle, we'll do the sub-drunk at the end. We'll cut all the volunteers. I'll just do the thing. Do you remember that joke we used to do years ago in that thing? We'll take that joke. We'll do that. I'll do something about licking something and whatever. And we'll just kind of do, because we've been doing this so long now, sometimes tricks go, we'll just kind of make it up. But now, when we do that sub-drunk trick in our kids' show, now the script is a script.
It's almost like the first few runs of a theater show, instead of it changing in real time, it's performed, it's done, and at the end, or before the next one, you're saying, okay, switch this, do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we do for every show, and every time, it's not even the first few runs, every time we do a performance, we will be coming off and going, so recently we came off and went, I've got no idea for a joke that can go in that thing. Or there is a thing I think we could add to this or take from that, or I don't need to say, or I do need to say.
This isn't particularly clear, this could be better,
And even things going, I've realised, because I often perform with a cane when I'm on stage, going, like a walking cane. Are we like, I've realised that there's an awkward bit where I have to put my cane down, whereas if I put it down 2 lines earlier when I walk past that thing, I've now removed that awkward bit.
Do you have any rules for your interactions with each other, either off stage in the creation portion or on stage, to help you from either avoiding arguments or growing fastest or anything like that?
We used to.
The only rule we have really is that if we've got something that is happening or going into a show or anything like that, if one of us doesn't want to do it and can provide a reason, an actual reason, rather than I just don't think it's right, you don't get power of veto, but you do get sort of like reasonable argument, as it were, then that's that. It doesn't go in.
And it's very, very rare that if one of us doesn't like something, that we always have a long conversation about a long conversation.
I mean, 8 years ago, these conversations would take 4 days. Now they take about 40 minutes.
Yeah, because usually it's like, well, if one of us doesn't like it, it's not going in.
Because it's not going to work.
But in finding out why you don't like it, you can sometimes change one thing and you like it.
But yeah, by talking it out, you might reveal what part of it is the thing that's setting you off.
Yeah.
And one of the things we often talk about when it comes to writing material is that one of the ways we've written a lot of our material over the years for Magic is looking at a trick and going, I don't like that. Why don't I like it? And can I write a... So in Power Tricks, the show, which is also now the book we've written with Vanishing Ink, several of the tricks are versions of tricks that we have made where the traditional version of a trick is something we don't like. So like we have a version of linking rings where we're going, I don't like the linking rings.
As is the kind of the modern presentation.
Every version of the linking rings you can think of, and I'm like, I think all of them suffer from a very obvious problem, which is that the first solution that pops into your head is the solution. And so we were like, well, okay, can you do a version of the linking rings where you have 2 rings
that are fully examined
by the audience at the same time, with that no dodgy, now this one and now swap and now this one, none of that. Just there are 2 rings and they're examined, and then you bring people on stage, and then at the end of the trick, those 2 rings, or seemingly those 2 rings, are now fused. And again, you could hand those fused rings to someone and they can check them and they're linked.
Right. It's amazing that the starting point of new magic is finding shitty magic.
Well, but the thing is, I think the problem is that most people's approach to linking rings is going, so I'm going to find every bit of literature I can on linking rings. Great. I'm going to read them all. Great. And I'm going to cherry pick the best bits. And I think, and our attitude is, wouldn't it be better to go, I'm going to take the concept of the linking rings. I'm going to invent a problem. Or as in, I'm going to invent
find the thing I don't like.
Finding I don't like. I don't like the fact that you can never really examine the rings. I don't like the fact that they always link and then unlink. It's never a permanent change. And going, okay, using everything I know about the linking rings and everything I know about every other aspect of magic,
can I solve that problem?
Rather than going, this is so-and-so's move and then so-and-so's move and then Vernon's thing and then thing, and being like, and I am master of linking rings because I've learned everyone else's routine, being like, but mightn't there be stuff that no one has ever done before that is a completely different method to the linking rings?
It's kind of like taking bits and pieces from places is almost like doing magic without thinking, or like actually digging deep into something. And instead it's just collecting like little bits and pieces. I had a professor who once said, teaching is the process of a thought going from the blackboard of the professor to the notebook of the student without passing through the minds of either of them. And I think that's often like resonant of a magician just going bit, stringing them all together and doing it without ever having their own input.
I think because magic is so much built on secrets, we forget that there aren't rules. So again, like we do a version of Cards Across, which we call the 10-card trick. The commercial name is Thought of Cards Across. And again, it's also in the book. But in that, we do a Cards Across where a card is looked at and thought of, and then it travels before it's even named. And then when it's named, we show it's traveled across the backs. But we only do 1 card because everyone else does 3 cards, and we just don't know why.
And no one's explained it, or no one has a good reason or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's just you do 3 cards because that's what you do, and it takes slightly longer.
Once the first one's gone, surely 2 and 3 are a tedious inevitability.
Yeah,
there's no new piece of the narrative.
One thing that really sticks out about your performances is that you really fill the stage, not only with your presence and the way you interact with each other, but also with sets and a lot of things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We started out touring many, many years ago in doing sort of small village halls in England about 8 or 9 years ago. And our thought was always, well, we want this to be as much of an experience as possible. And in those village halls...
There's often no stage and no lights or anything.
Our limitations were essentially what we could bring in the small Honda Jazz that we were touring in. And so we used to have a big steamer trunk that you could fold out because it would look quite impressive. And then we used to take speakers and a big sound file and do everything with sound. And
we got a spider backdrop.
Oh, we did get a spider backdrop just to pick it up, but to put it up and make it look nicer. And as the years progressed, we got larger and larger vehicles, and we were capable of taking more and more stuff until the science show that we tour now has got an 8 meter wide, 2.5 meter tall set.
If you go to our Instagram at Morgan and West on Instagram, we post pictures of our set in every venue we do, and it's massive.
And this is for a 2-person theatre company, essentially. It's because our motto has always been packs big, plays medium. in that we're lucky in a way because the British touring scene is one where, I can drive from one venue to the next venue and it rarely takes longer than 4.5 hours.
Yeah. Obviously in America or North America or Canada, like that's different because your theatres are much further apart. But for us, it's that thing of when it comes to set or costume or anything, I think if you say to someone, okay, you've got an act. What if I told you I could make your act more enjoyable to watch and you wouldn't have to learn any new tricks or any new lines? Would you like to do that? And they go, yeah, obviously. And you go, oh, and the way we're going to do it is I'm going to inconvenience you.
Right.
Because the finding things we don't like and fixing them. Pax Small Plays Big is going, hey, do you want to spend as little effort as possible doing your job as a magician?
And so, for a corporate audience where you've just been hired and they don't
care about you,
that's fine. In fact, that's sensible.
That's sensible, yeah. Don't bring a huge set to a corporate gig.
But when it is literally our name on the door of the theatre and our name printed on the ticket and people have paid their money to specifically see us, I want to make it feel like an event from the moment that people walk into the theatre. I want them to have that confidence in us from the word go.
I saw a picture today that Reece sent around the group, friends of ours, of the end of someone's show, and it's them bragging about getting a standing ovation. But I was looking at the picture, and the stage is just a guy on a blank stage with a screen. Standing there, I mean, like, what a boring looking thing. Whereas when people walk, because we sometimes, depending on where the access is, have to be behind our set as people walk into our show, and you'll see people hear people walk into our show and go, wow.
Well, the debut of our current science show was at the Edinburgh Fringe at the beginning of August in 2019, and quite literally, it was very funny. Quite literally, we'd spent a lot of money on the set and had it designed. It had been a massive pain in the backside because there had been problems, and we got it up for the first time. And it was the first time it was in front of a real audience. And a kid walked in, and the first thing the kid said was, wow, this looks really cool. And I was like, great, that's all I needed. That is all I needed.
And so much of magical performance, one of the things we often say when we talk about character work is that so much magical performance is about creating a connection with your audience. And like most magicians accept that you can do that is by telling jokes and doing tricks. Whereas our thing is like, well, what if you had like a cool poster design that makes the person more invested in the show because like this looks really cool. And what if when you're coming in you were playing really good or really thematic music? Then they know a bit more about the show and they're a bit more like, oh, this is exciting. The music's all spooky or funny or whatever. And what if when you walked in, rather than a blank stage with a single table with a box of props on it, what if the entire room was like a parlor or like a science lab or like a graveyard or like, what if it was all these? Suddenly you'd be like, oh my God, this is really exciting. And the show hasn't even started yet.
That was one thing that really stuck out to me at Magi Fest was the banter that you guys had mingling through the audience before the show started, which is kind of more along the lines of, really making an experience, really filling the space, really making it like start to finish enjoyable and not this whole sit, hands in your lap, wait, and then hello and welcome. I don't know if you do that at every show, but it really stuck out to me.
There's lots of reasons for doing that, and we don't do it with our science show for different reasons, but initially we started doing that in the Adelaide Fringe.
Adelaide in 2012.
In 2012, because the tents we were in were full, and they were on benches, not chairs, and people wouldn't move down.
It wasn't reserved seating.
It wasn't reserved seating. They'd just sit in the middle, and they'd be like, can you move down? We're full. And they'd be like, no, I'm sitting here. And they'd be real dicks about it. And they were getting very mean to our front of house team. So we were like, okay, we will start the show as people are coming in on stage.
Doing the whole kind of like, we're full, so move down.
Because I was like, people, they've paid to see us, so they're way less willing, even though the front of house team are our team, they're way less willing to be dicks to us than they are to members of what they consider staff. And that's how it began. But we realised that actually it's really good for warming a room up if they're not sure about what the show's going to be, because we can look quite severe and quite old-fashioned.
It keys people in very early doors into the fact that we don't take ourselves very seriously.
Yeah, we're like, don't worry. What we're saying is, don't worry, this is going to be fun.
Like one of the things that we always do, and again, we found all the bits that we do in those sort of like those opening 10 minutes where people are walking in. They're always very similar. We never do more than 10 minutes because we run out of things to say.
Yeah, and then it just sounds awkward because you're just wandering around.
But one of my favourite things to do is I will work out where Rob is in the room, so I know where he is, and I will stand somewhere that's either as far away from him as I can get, or somewhere I can't see him, or somewhere as close to him as I can get. And I'll just start yelling into my microphone, Marco,
Polo,
Marco,
Polo.
And
then I'll go, hang on, we're coming through the same speakers. Marco Polo doesn't work when you're amplified.
And then I'll go, oh, it doesn't. Marco, and it just...
But we're just doing silly nonsense, and you don't need to hear any of it. But the point is, we're tuning the audience into our sense of humour and what the show is going to be like. But also, we are making it more of an event. One of the reasons that in Magic we talk so much about how you need to have a really good punchy opener is that because up until the point at which you do your first trick, no one is interested, and so you need to kind of go blam like that to prove that you're worth watching. Whereas actually, if the show looks and sounds amazing before you even take to the stage, and you walk out and you look amazing in your costume, the audience are going to give you 5 minutes to do something. They're not going to give you 15 minutes to do something, but they'll give you 5. And it's that same thing where when we're in the room, what we're doing is we're just buying the trust of the audience. And also when we do kids shows, because in our kids shows, I'm very mean to the children. What that also serves to do is I'm very friendly in the audience. And the second the show starts, I turn and I become very mean. And what I'm doing there is I'm telling the children that it's a game. Because if I was just a scary adult who walked out onto the stage and started having a go at the kids, I'm just a scary adult. Where if I'm a funny-looking adult and I go to the stage and suddenly I'm mean, then actually what's going on is they go, oh, he's pretending. He's pretending he doesn't like kids. And so a lot of kids come up to me after our kids shows when we're doing photos and stuff of them outside, and they go, do you really not like kids? And I'll say, well, I've never met one I liked. Right. You know, and they would only ask that if they know it's a game.
Speaking of shows, one thing that absolutely flabbergasts me is that you guys have, 7 different shows that you do?
Over the years, we've written something like 12 and a half, 13 hours worth of stage show material and performed them for at least 25 shows. Yeah. But that's the Edinburgh Fringe for you because it chews you up and spits you out again. But in our our currently performing repertoire, as it were, there are 2 hour-long kids shows, 2 90-minute evening shows, 1 60-minute Christmas show, 1 60-minute science show. And that's basically our repertoire. Right?
That's six. Okay, still outrageous.
Well, the 7th one is a close-up show that doesn't exist anymore because we threw away.
We got rid of the table for us. We can't do it.
If you told us you've got to do it in 3 days, we'd be like, oh, God, I better go and learn it. Yeah. So, that's fine. I've got the script somewhere.
So what's the motivation to have so many different shows for different audiences?
We get bored. Honestly,
we get bored, and you can only in the UK you can only tour the same show for a couple of years max.
Yeah, the great strength of the UK touring scene is that we can drive to a lot of venues in a short amount of time.
You do like 1 show a day for like quite a long time, even more, I assume. But I looked at your schedule.
Yeah, we get around a lot, especially in the school holidays and stuff. We can do like a show every day in a different town, and that's fine. The downside of that is that after 1 or 2 years of touring that, all the theatres have had it.
And they don't want it again.
And they don't want it again. They want a new show. Whereas in America, you can just tour forever because by the time you get back to whatever town you were in last time you were there, it's been 5 or 6 years and you can do the same show again. But I would get so bored. So we did our kids' shows because we were a bit bored of doing evening shows.
Oh, we've done it in the science show because we're a bit bored of doing magic shows.
Yeah, like and we did our Christmas show because we thought it would be a fun challenge to write. Writing shows, like anything else, is a skill, and you get better the more you do it. And we like writing and creating stuff. So we're like, I love performing. I love performing a show, even if I've done it a million times before. And I love trying to find those new moments. But at the same time, there's something really great about that thing of going, isn't it funny to think that 6 months ago or 9 months ago, that show didn't exist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that feeling of when something is created and you're doing it and you're like, wow, like this was not that long ago, just ideas. Like this was just brain stuff. And like now it's real.
We sometimes stand in our lockup where we keep all the sets. Because obviously when you have sets for your shows, you need to keep them somewhere because they take up a huge amount of room.
And we look at it and we go, gosh, this is costing us money to keep this stuff here.
Costing us money to keep this there. And weirdly, we've got to a point now when we're trying to work out whether some of our sets, it's cheaper to store them or chuck them away and rebuild them in 5 years. But I stand there in the lockup and look around and go, everything here is here because we dreamt it up. And that's an amazing thing to have. And I think that...
Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair.
And despair.
It's...
and it's that sense of going, we really like making stuff. So why, because now we have enough material that we could never write another show. Because we could just tour our science show for a bit and then tour one of our shows, then swap it around for another one and then swap it back. And we could just cycle material we've got. But I want a new challenge. I want to create new stuff. I want every show I do to be bigger and better and more ambitious than the one before it. It's about creating something I want to make the very best thing I can make. And we probably didn't write that show in 2010.
And it also takes however many goes at it to do it. And the more every trick, even if it's great and usable in a keeper and whatever, like maybe the next one is even better. Maybe the next idea is
And got ideas for tricks that are old tricks of ours. I'm going, I don't know when we will next do this show. It might not be, until toward the end of the decade. But when we do this trick again, I've got a better method for it.
Right. That's awesome. Talk to me a little bit about the kids shows and kind of how that came about, and then how it's different. What you're kind of doing in it that's different to engage with kids than you do with adults.
So it's not really different to engage with kids. It came about because we wanted the challenge of writing a kids theatre show, not kids party magic, but a proper kids theatre show.
And we'd seen a lot of great kids theatre, and we'd never seen a good kids magic show.
And so we wanted to do that, and we just amplified the characters a little bit.
In the same way, when we first set out, we were like, I'm not going to talk down to the audience, I'm not going to do this, not going to do that. With the kids shows, we're like, right, I want to do a kids show, I want no sucker tricks.
Yeah.
I want
the magic to be as enjoyable for the adults as it is for the kids. I want it to be as mysterious and mystifying for the adults as it is for the kids.
Yeah, and the point is that an adult should walk out of our kids show and go, I don't know how they did any of that.
And the adults never laugh at the kids on stage. They only ever laugh at us.
Yeah. And so, because even if I say something mean to a kid, they're not laughing at the child. They're laughing at the fact that I have the gall to say it.
Right.
Because there are a lot of sort of like good kids magic and good kids musicians out there who will set up situations where it's very, very obvious as an adult you're watching it, where you're kind of laughing at the kid, like, is that old table gag, isn't there, where you've got the table and a leg falls off and you get the kid to pick up the leg of the table and they give it to you and then the other leg falls off, and you keep doing that forever and eventually a pair of legs flips out of the table, which is fun, but everyone in the room is laughing at the fact that the kid is having to do the legwork. And I had a very, very distinct memory as a child, I must have been about 5 or 6, of seeing a kid's magician in the back room of a pub in Wales. It was a birthday party. It was a friend's birthday party. And I was brought on stage and I was given the breakaway wand to hold. And it fell apart. And I remember at the time, and it's a very vivid memory, I remember at the time thinking, no, I didn't do that. No, I didn't break that.
And when you're a kid, when you break things, you get in trouble.
Yeah. And I used to hate getting in trouble as a child. And it stuck with me. And so that was one of the rules of writing the kids show, was none of those moments. Nothing where...
We're not making the kids failures, we're making the kids successes.
The kids always are successes. The kids always win.
So in our second kids show, we have an egg bag routine. And we kind of liked the idea of it, and there's some funny stuff you can do with it. But the thing we settled on was if we do this, I think we can get a kid to do an egg bag. I think it's an easy enough, the spectatory stuff is easy enough to do with a child if you have good crowd management with kids, that they could do it and that thing. And we're and we want to have a series of building up. And we realize that it's Mr. West doing it and being mean, but he gets kind of undermined by Mr. Morgan and stuff. And we're okay, Mr. West can never successfully produce an egg. The kid has to get everything. In that, the kid, even though if Mr. West is being mean to them or calling them names, whatever,
the kid has to know the meanness is a game.
That's the meanness is a game, and the kid has to be the winner every time. And the kid will do things, and we can do things like the first thing they could produce is a golf ball, not an egg.
It's a sports egg.
It's not a sports egg; it's a golf ball. And I will do things like I snatch it off the kid, and we talk about this sometimes when we lecture. Of obviously, when I snatch it off the kid, I reach over. The first inch of me taking it is a very gentle take. And then the second that ball is in my hand and out of that kid's control, I yank my arm away and move my whole body like I have just ripped it out of their hand. But that kid knows they're safe, and they kind of know that they can come out of this a winner.
They see that there's bits going on and that they're not the victim of them.
Exactly.
Whereas you could easily get a kid up or an adult up with the egg bag and be like, do this, do this, do this. No, there's the egg. Do this, or the classic 2 linking rings thing. So Whit Hayden does an amazing bit with 2 linking rings where he's got 2 and he's given the audience member 2 linked ones. And rather than going, you do this, you do this, do this, no, you're doing it wrong. Why can't you get them apart? He turns away, unlinks them, does a series of impressive moves, links them and turns back. And he turns back to see an audience member still with 2 linked rings. And he's like, brilliant, you're doing a great job. And in a way, obviously, you are still kind of the joke there is not this person can't do it because they suck. The joke there is that...
Well, the joke is on the magician. The magician hasn't noticed that
they're not doing the thing. Whit makes himself look like a a slightly doddery old, like he's so in the thing and he's doing this impressive stuff. But the joke is that he's like turn around and be like, "Great job, you're getting this," rather than going, "Come on, what are you doing?" Like, which you easily could do, and would get a laugh from the audience, but then they would be laughing at that person, and you're setting them up to fail rather than setting them up to succeed.
One of the things that I've always felt about magic for kids and magic for adults is that if the performance of the magic is like silly, ridiculous, lighthearted, any of those two things, like I think that obviously if you've got an audience of mostly kids or an audience of mostly adults, you can change some major decisions. But I think good magic and good performers can really entertain them both at the exact same time. I think of people like David Williamson, just as an example of like somebody whose the kids in the audience are having just as much fun as the adults. They're just as fooled and it's just as entertaining. Do you think that's like a magician thing to be trying to really either undermine the knowledge or the experience or the intellect of kids, or overhype the uptightness of adults, or anything of that end?
I think it's a generic kids performer trait from people who don't actually have any experience of kids.
Yeah.
So because we're ex-teachers,
we're ex-high school teachers,
so we know that kids are every bit as intelligent as adults are. Because also, when you think back to being a kid, you never
didn't you hate it when someone was like, "Hello, are we?" Like, if you're 2 years old, great.
I mean, I still resented people calling me young man up to the age of about 30. Now that they've stopped it, I kind of miss it.
Yeah, and we're like, no, come on.
You know, I'm not that haggard, but like, it's just not necessary, and it doesn't. It's people writing for how they think they should talk to kids because they've forgotten what kids are like. So
and kids understand character and story way better than adults do. So if I'm there in this huge over the top costume and I'm being really mean to them, like some people are like, "I can't believe you'd say that to a child," and I was like, it's fun. It's a fun game. No. Like when I chase my niece around the house and I'm a monster, like she's not scared. She's screaming, but she's not scared. It's a game.
Yeah. And that kind of talking down to kids, it's definitely not just peculiar to magic, because like in some of the sort of volunteering work I do outside of magic, one of the things I'm doing at the moment is sort of going into schools to deliver presentations about stuff. And I've done some training with some other people, and some of them are really good at it because they talk to the kids like people, and some of them are really bad at it because they talk to the kids.
Hey, kids!
Yeah. And they kind of like change the way they interact, and it's just like, no, mate.
That's really neat.
Yeah. No, mate, just talk like a person. It's fine. They're also people. And these are talking to like 16-year-olds. God knows what they'd be like talking like to a 10-year-old, you know? And
I think part of it is that with magic, I think a lot of magicians maybe forget that magic isn't cool. Like, wearing a suit and doing card tricks doesn't make you James Bond, no matter how much we want it to.
You know, people. You know, I used to play a lot of Warhammer. I don't anymore because I don't have the time. But by and large, the people who play Warhammer are aware that it isn't cool.
Yeah,
and they don't try and make it cool. Whereas I don't think a lot of magicians are aware that it's not cool.
Yeah, most magicians don't realise that being a magician is up there with being the head of chess club. You know, actually, if you think about it, it is quite a interesting.
It's interesting. It's fascinating,
but it's not cool.
You're not the Fonz.
Yeah, you know,
like, somehow magicians think that when you add the word professional before it, that's now it's cool.
And these, you know, I once tweeted a thing which I stand by, which is there is no greater gap than the gap between the intelligence it takes to do a magic trick and the intelligence magicians think it takes to do a magic trick.
Right.
In that thing of, I think a lot of magicians get so fooled by the fact that they're fooling people with easy tricks that they go, well, I must be a genius. And similarly, they're getting laughs at magic tricks or at jokes that they've stolen from someone else. And they're going, oh, I'm a really funny person. It's like, it's not hard to make someone laugh. Right?
One thing that I didn't speak up about, which I usually talk about earlier, I kind of blanked, is I'm always really interested in the journey into magic. And I know both of you were teachers, math and chemistry. Was there a moment where you decided to say, like, you know, let's hop off this ship and become magicians? Was it something concrete?
Yes, before we started our teacher training.
Yes, it was before we started teacher training. It was always the plan. It was, we either wanted to run a puppet theatre, theatre company that worked exclusively in the medium of puppetry, or try and be magicians, and we got the opportunity to be magicians first, and that was that.
But literally the plan, we did the plan of like, we'll train, we'll teach for a year or so, and then we'll try and be magicians.
And that's
that was
exactly
all-
what happened, about a year's worth of teaching.
Year and a half. Should have been 2 years, but we got an offer to go to the Adelaide Fringe, so we went
So
there.
we jumped 6 months early.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was that thing of, there was no moment of us going, God, I think maybe I could do. We were like, no,
now's the time. Now.
From day one, we were like, here's the plan. Let's do this.
I want to talk about the coding act, because you guys are quite a unique coding act, because you're not only a coding act.
Yeah.
And I think that it plays a big role in not only the deceptiveness, but also just the general enjoyment of there being a variety of things in your show, and not the same thing, but different versions, different objects, different sizes, or things like that. Can you touch a little bit on that?
We do a very different coding act to the traditional idea of a second sight act, because we've never worked out an ending for a second sight act.
Just escalating in objects, you mean? Like, as in, like, there's no big finale?
In the same way that when you do cards across, after the first card has gone across, the fact that the second and third card have gone across is not surprising. After a while with a second sight act, you know they're going to get it right. And so how do you narratively close
make it
that?
interesting? It's tough. It's a really tough one. And our codes are situational. We have a very limited number of generic codes. But for example, if someone took an item out of their pocket and Rob picked it up off them and said some words to me, I would not be able to tell them what that item is.
I can't say to Reese, bottle of pills. I can't do that.
We write tricks, and some of those tricks we write are coding tricks because there are two of us. And when we started writing magic tricks 12 years ago, we thought, well, there are two of us, we should probably write some code tricks.
Yeah, but honestly, I think our attitude is that I want the method for a trick to be the best method.
So the intrasensory perception.
Yeah, that senses trick.
A lot of magicians think it's code. There is not code.
Yeah,
there is no code.
There is one tiny bit of coding in that, but everything else is done a much more blunt way.
Yeah.
Because we tried to do it with code.
And it was really hard.
And in screwing it up one day, we came up with a much better solution. And I think the thing is, with Kodaks, kind of people's thing is like, if you're a Kodak and people want to come see your Kodak, you kind of have to do that. Whereas people come to see us for us.
Yeah, the public don't know us as a Kodak. Magicians know us as a Kodak.
Yeah, the public know us as like funny, silly.
If
family.
they know us at all.
If they know, the public don't know us. But those public that do know us as funny, silly, theatre types.
And I'll say just on what you said, like, before I saw you guys at Magi Fest, I thought you were a Kodak. And then I watched you and I was like totally flabbergasted and enthralled. I really, really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. And we haven't helped ourselves in a way by the first Magic release we ever put out to the community. It was about code. But that's because not many people talk about code, and it's
not
really
many people
interesting.
know about it. And it's that thing of,
and there's a lot of bad stuff about that.
And we can lecture about character and stagecraft and stuff like that, but that doesn't involve a method that someone can learn. And magicians deep down want to be told secrets, and so we're like, well, we've got some really good secrets.
Yeah, here's a bunch of secrets.
We touched on it a little bit earlier, but more on the lens of believability and audience buy-in. I want to talk a little bit more about shtick and having a bit and doing that bit and enjoying it. Many magicians, who they are on stage is themselves, but maybe a little bit different in one way. And obviously we all are, but kind of exaggerating that and having, I don't know, a shtick, a bits, things that...
I disagree with what you've said.
Yeah.
I think the obviously we all are, I think, is wrong.
Yeah.
I am nothing like the Mr. Morgan character, and Rob is nothing like the Mr. West character in real life. They're very different people. And I think a lot of 95% of the best performing magicians that you will see out there who the public really enjoy watching are not like how they are in real life on stage.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they have a shtick. I think they have a character.
And they are playing a character. And that comes down to, like, David Blaine is obviously like a full-on intense guy, but his stage character, and especially in the early specials, his street magic character was very like, look, what? That's not him. He's a bit of a dork, really. But that's a character. Darren Brown plays a character on stage. So it is playing a character, whether it's a super over the top.
Lance Burton's a farmer.
Yeah.
Right. He's retired to his farm.
Exactly.
He's not wearing a three-piece suit and a dicky bow on his farm.
He's a hit. But the thing is, so it is about character, and I think people are scared of character because they think it involves dressing up as a dragon or a time traveler. But actually,
which are both good characters.
But also, like, in terms of but actually, any combination of shtick or bits is, if they make sense, is a character. And I think the way of having good bits and good shtick, and the way of coming up with good bits and good shtick, as it were, is to understand who your character is and have them make sense. So let's say I once saw a performer do a bit where he gave someone a pen and couldn't remember if he'd given it or not, and asked them for it back and he'd already got it or something. And I just had this moment going, you could do a really funny recurring thing with a performer where they gave out pens to get stuff signed or written down and were super insistent about getting them back. That's not an amazing bit, but it's a lovely.
It's a 5-10 minute idea for a character.
It's a little charactery thing you could drop in. It's a trait you could drop into into your act that would tell you something about your character. But you can't do that if your character is the big, bumbling, friendly Mr. Morgan.
Right.
Whereas if your character is the vain, proud, superior Mr. West, if I get someone a pen and they write something down, I could theoretically, if I wanted to play a nastier character, say, "Are you done? Yes. Well, give me the pen back then." That could be a thing. And the stuff that makes shows interesting is all those little decisions and ideas and things that make up a character, and they feel weird and incongruous, and they don't work if they don't fit your character. So it's weird when a magician who's all friendly and funny, you get someone up on stage and borrows a ring from someone and says, "Oh, it's engraved. Let me just check it out. It says made in China." Well, that's a horrible thing to say to someone. And the thing is but it gets a laugh, but it's you being mean, and it's the thing of and if your character is you're mean, great, do mean stuff. But if your character is you're a fun, interesting, engaging guy and you want the audience to come and help you, doing a little bit, which is you being mean to someone because it gets a laugh, doesn't make sense.
There's also a thing of, I think it's very easy to assume that most people kind of do an amplified version of themselves on stage, because the other thing that you need for a character to work is authenticity.
Yep.
And by authenticity, I mean anything you are talking about or alluding to know about or doing, you need to know and understand properly. So if I'm going to go and do a routine that we do, I can't remember, did we do it at Magifest? No, we didn't do True or False at Magifest, did we? Or did we do it? No, I couldn't find it.
Oh, no, we did, because Josh liked it so much.
Because Josh really
our cup and ball chop cup routine with the True
love it.
It's all about basically the idea of quantum tunneling and wave particle duality, but in a chalk cup. And if you're going to do something about that, you damn well better know about it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know about it, people will tell that you don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So at one point we ask the audience members, is it underneath the cup or is it in my pocket? And often someone will say both. At which point I reply, something along the lines of, well, strictly speaking, whilst currently the wave particle, whilst the wave functions of the particles are superposed, upon the moment of observation, they will collapse to one single location according to the Schrödinger wave equation. Underneath the cup or in my pocket, which will it be? And
and if you're someone in the audience who knows a lot about physics, when Rick says that, you'll go, huh. These guys really know a lot about physics. Whereas if someone says, so I got this cup and this ball, and that's a bit like quantum physics, they'll go, what? Whereas we get to we don't say, here's a trick about quantum physics, here's a cup and here's a ball. We say, obviously you know the ball is here and it's in my pocket, and whichever you pick it won't be in, so the act of picking it will move it.
Which is kind of the idea that observation affects the outcome because eyes make it different.
And what we do there is, and then we literally say this is like Schrödinger. And we allude to those things, but we've led it up to there. So someone in the audience there might be being like, well, yeah, this is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle you're talking about. And rather than starting with, I'm now going to talk about physics, 'cause I'm smart, we just kind of go, yeah, like this, and then they go, oh, these guys know what they're talking about.
In the same way that when we're doing pre-show interaction in a kids show, we will go up to kids who are wearing Lego jumpers and we'll start going, oh, I see. So who's your favorite Ninjago character? Really, I'm less keen on those. I prefer, I can't remember the names of the
Cole, for example.
Yeah, Cole.
But, and the thing is, if you go up to a kid who's wearing a Lego jumper and say, do you like Lego? Lego's great. And they go, yes, my favorite thing's this. And you don't know what that is. Then you have to go. Whereas if I go up to a kid and say, amazing Ninjago thing, Loloid, Garmadon, oh, I just built the Ninjago city, it's amazing.
Or if I don't know anything about Ninjago, I can turn around and go, actually the thing I really like at the moment is Lego Batman. Have you seen the Lego Batman mech set that came out a couple of months ago? It's great, I'd quite like to get it.
It's that authenticity of being like, oh, you're written, or like, and if you want, you can, as a character, you can fake that authenticity, but you need to fake it properly.
You need to learn stuff.
You need to learn stuff and look stuff up. Rather than just going, I vaguely heard this on the Big Bang Theory, so I'm pretty sure I can use this as patter.
So how does somebody develop a character in a way that's, I guess, authentic. I was going to say synonymous with themselves, but I think authentic with themselves. Like, what kind of avenues does one search in to develop that?
I mean, pick a character, write some lines for it, think of an idea of a costume, think of how it sounds, think of how it looks, think of how it feels, try it out a few times. If you like it, work out what you like about it and refine it down further.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, work out what you don't like, chuck that out and replace it with something.
Yeah, and it's just something being like, what do I think would be cool to do?
Like, a friend of ours has had an idea for a character for ages, which if we were solo performers, apart from the fact that we've already said if we were solo performers we'd be lazy and wouldn't do anything, I would desperately love to do, which is a mind-reading character where the entire character is you are dressed impeccably in like a slightly riffle-cuffed, old-fashioned 1960s sort of like John Pertwee Doctor Who suit, but your head is that of a raven.
Yeah. And just your character
and you
is
don't speak.
you're just a silent, raven-headed dandy. And like, what a great idea for
it's great.
And it's mad.
Bonkers. It's
once
bonkers.
Once you realise there's no rules, or like, I thought it'd be really good to do a character for a while. I really wanted to do a character who was obviously a Victorian magician because I had all the costume. But I was like, to do a Victorian magician whose shtick was that they are the last person to die doing the bullet catch. And your costume is like old, like 1920s white tie tails, and you've just got a huge bloodstain on your chest, and you're kind of all pale, and you're playing this character who's kind of slightly not quite there, and whose memory is a little bit off. And the idea is that you're dead, and you don't quite realise, and however that, and like, I just think that's a really fun, and it can, and ideas for characters like that can be as much as that, or it can be you watch an episode of Doctor Who and go, I could be a character a bit like Doctor Who. And then just go, okay, well, if that's the idea...
Which Doctor?
Which Doctor? Because there's a lot of them to pick from.
There's a debatable number of them to pick from.
And which Doctor? But also they're going, the important thing there is going, okay, what immediately leaps to mind when you do that? Great. What fits that? What bits or what tricks or what ideas or what kind of behaviours or funny things you could do or whatever? Great. And what things don't fit that?
Because that's just as important.
Because so often people go, I've got this character, and my character is a psychic, telepath, alien, blah.
Would you like to pick a card?
Would you like to pick a card? And it's like, why are you using cards? I'm like, well, I can mind read about anything, so why not use cards? It's like, because they're super magician-y. That's why. If you're going to do those things, it's important to find things that work and that you like, but also it's important to be very strict about going, this doesn't fit. There are loads of cool tricks you can do with phones, or any app created by Mark Kirstein is a brilliant trick, right?
But we can't do any of them.
Not
just because we don't have any iPhones and he won't write anything for Android.
Lazy.
Always said that about Mark. Lazy.
But the thing that even if we borrowed a phone, the image of Morgan and West on stage holding a cell phone
doesn't quite work.
Doesn't fit.
If that photo was taken, it'll look out of place.
Yeah, everyone go, why are they holding a phone?
We can have people on stage with us and they're using their phones because that works, but we can't have anything to do with them. It just doesn't really.
And again, and even if and someone might argue that, well, that means I could do Wikitest because I could have someone go on their phone to Wikipedia. But why would I, as a time travel magician, say, take out your phone and go to Wikipedia? Why wouldn't I go, here's an encyclopedia?
Here are all 87 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica. I know what you're thinking.
Pick one.
Yes, they're pretty heavy. Which one would you like?
Because that fit, we have a bit in the Parlor Tricks book we talk about, where we talk about a book test that we do, which kind of isn't really a book test because the book actually isn't any way to do with it. But thematically, the book fit. It's done with a dictionary. And the method does not involve the book at all. It's just that to get them to pick an interesting word, we get them to pick a cool word from the dictionary. And the visual of it is important. And the way of getting to do it is important. But it's not actually a book test because the book just feels right. And also because if I said to someone, think of a random word, they'll think of a boring word. And we don't subscribe to the whole, to make it more random, I'll give you this limited choice of words in this book. I think that's nonsense. But saying to someone, our thing is we say to someone, I want you to think of a word you don't know.
So if you know that you don't know it, in a way you know it. So I need you to think of a word that you do not know that you do not know.
And obviously the only way of giving us that word
is a dictionary.
And it means now, rather than...
Everything makes sense.
Everything makes sense. And rather than the audience going, I bet everyone says table, we literally get to say to them, in this box within a box within a box within a box, or whatever word prediction you're doing, you go, I literally couldn't have known before the show you would do this because you didn't know that this word existed. That's a really strong narrative for a trick. It's not just you thought of a word. It's not just you of any word. You thought of a word that up until that moment you did not know existed. And I predicted it. That's a much stronger prediction than just you could have thought of any word.
It's great, and I think, again, it has to do with the aligning of the character and making those kind of, not necessarily rules, but you've got a framework to push ideas and tricks and props and everything up against.
Yeah, what fits you, what doesn't fit you, what feels right, what doesn't feel right.
But it's like, it's not you, it's your character, right? This thing that you've built, right?
But there's no point in fighting it either. If you try and do a character and you find yourself not enjoying it, then screw it up and start again.
Right. It has to be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, so the character of Mr. West is nothing like me, but I'm good at playing the character of Mr. West.
And you enjoy playing the character.
And I enjoy playing the character of Mr. West. Watching Reese, the greatest joy of my life is watching Reese be an idiot on stage. Like, no one is an idiot on stage like Reese is.
And the greatest joy of my life is being an idiot on stage.
But it's that thing of, but that doesn't mean that deep down Reese is an idiot. It's just he's really good at playing that character.
It's just quite fun. It's just quite nice. But quite relaxing. Some people have baths. I like playing an idiot, you know.
Yeah. But it's just really enjoyable doing that.
Why time traveling magicians?
Very simple answer, because we very quickly, our first show was we were dressed as Victorians, and we asked ourselves the question at the end of that first run of Edinburgh Fringe, hang on, is the audience in the past?
Or are we in the future?
I don't really. There's a problem here. How about we're time travelers? That solves everything, right? That solves everything. Done.
Just smooths it all out.
Logistics. It was just going. Doesn't quite make sense.
It's like when people come up to us and say, like, "Oh, you shouldn't know about mobile." Look, we used to flyer every day in the Edinburgh Fringe in full costume, and you'd be there on your phone when you were sat down having a sandwich or something. You shouldn't know about phones. Our response would just be, "Time travel, mate. Time travel." You know, it's just.
I've been to the future.
Yeah.
And why the Victorian era bit, 1800s?
We nicked it from the Prestige.
The Prestige film came out in 2007. We started doing magic in 2007.
Awesome.
A great way of getting a character is to steal it from somewhere else. Honestly.
Really?
Yeah, of course it is. Like what? Like what's the old line? Creativity is learning how to cover your sources. Find a cool character from a TV show.
Well, we just talked about Doctor Who as a starting point.
Just go through all iterations of Doctor Who, and be like, one of them will be like, yeah, I like that.
And that resonates with a lot of what your guys are saying. Same as with effects, like finding a trick and changing it up, burying your sources and, and like using that trick.
Ultimately, it is all down to the very simple thing is whenever we do directing days with Peter, the days largely involve him sat there watching things and going, why?
Why are you doing that?
And just asking us the question why. And he might have an idea for an answer, he might not. And it's exactly the same with every aspect of magic as performance, is you have a lot of things to do and a lot of decisions to make. And the easy way out is to do the things as they have always been done.
And make 0 decisions.
Because that's making a decision for yourself. Whereas if you make a decision and you know and understand why you are making that decision, it is always a good decision.
So we're good friends with, Paul Debec. He's an English magician, does something with the Illusionists?
Yeah, he's with the Illusionists.
Stuff. And Paul's great, he's a lovely guy, and his stuff is very trad. It is.
He's an incredible sleight of hand.
He's an incredible sleight of hand artist, a very good performer on stage.
He's really funny, and he's a really good compere. But the actual tricks
all his stuff and all his material is very old school. It's nothing you haven't seen Jeff Hobson do. It's nothing you haven't seen a million people do. And he does them perfectly, but he isn't interested in doing original stuff. He just wants to be the best entertainer he can be.
And he is one of the best.
And he is great at it. And I love Paul. But the thing is, that's fine, and I have a huge amount of respect for him because he knows what he wants and he's pursued it vehemently.
And he has made that decision, and he knows why he's made that decision, and it's a decision he is happy and comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask.
And that's all you can ask. And, to earn my respect, you don't need to be the most original act in the world, but you just need to have made a decision and worked on it.
Yeah, making choices,
make choices and know why you're making them.
It's easy to make a choice. Tonight, am I going to have sausages or am I going to have burgers?
Yeah.
It's an easy choice, but then, why do I want one over the other? That's the difficult thing.
Yeah. And if you can
make the choice by tossing a coin.
Yeah. And I think if you're working with we're working directorially with someone and they're performing, and if you stop them and say, sorry, why did you just do that? if they can't answer you, then that's a problem. If you say to someone, if someone makes a joke and you say, why did you tell that joke? Or why did you say that way? If they can't answer you, that's a problem. A lot of bad magic is done from people doing things for no real reason other than it fills a gap.
Right. Or that it's what other people have done.
And it's what other people have done, and it was good in the 50s. So why wouldn't it be good now? Like all those other things that have lasted that well.
Before we get to the wrap-up questions, which we do in every episode, I want to ask you one other weird question that I had at Magi Fest, and I just want to ask, why do you code in backwards order?
We code...
We don't always code in backwards order.
It's situational. We code in a way that makes sense for the lines that we're saying and where we can fit things in. Because we've learned over the years that we are both quite good at holding information in various ways, and so actually it kind of doesn't matter.
Because are you talking about the coins and stuff, for example?
Yeah.
So if I drop a handful of change on the table and you have to count it as quickly as you can, what's the first piece of information you can tell me about the handful of change?
Either the big coins or the little coins?
The little
coins, because if you think about it,
right.
If you've got, I don't know, your coin, American coins and Canadian coins are different, but say you've got a whole bunch of quarters and things and whatever, then you don't know how many dollars it is. Or in England, if I count the pound coins, that's fine, but a bunch of 50p's and 20p's also make pounds. Whereas in England, the 5s and the 2s and the 1, the 5p, the 2p and the 1p coins, by counting them, I know the smallest digit of the total.
Because you can pair up the 5s and get rid of those, so you can whittle that down. You just need to work out, is it an odd or even number of 5s, and then go from there.
Last digit is 3. And it means that when doing that, I can give Reese information as quickly as I possibly can. In the same way that, like, if I'm going to code-start Reese an American driving license, the first thing I'm going to give him is the state, because that's the first piece of information I see. And then while he's doing stuff, I have time to read the rest.
That's something I needed to know. Thank you. Okay, so now we are at the wrap-up questions. So these are questions that I ask every guest on the podcast, and starting with the first, which is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest who would be fantastic on the podcast. The only caveat is that you have to be able to put us in contact. Who would be fantastic for this sort of conversation?
Have you interviewed Rune Clan?
Not yet, and he is amazing.
Right. He is amazing.
Yeah, Rune.
Yeah, awesome. What a great recommendation. The next thing is about magic in the modern era. So what is one thing going on in the world of Magic 2020 that you like, and something going on in the world of Magic 2020 that you don't like?
It's going to be quite a boring answer, because honestly, I don't know anything about the modern era of magic. I'm now, especially...
We're literally touring a science show right now. Like, we're not even doing a magic show for the next couple of years.
And a facetious answer to what's the thing that you really like is the launch of our book, Parlor Tricks, which is coming out from Managing Inc. and has got loads of our thinking about everything in it.
Which is the thing I want to talk about right now. So tell us a little bit about this book. What is it? I know it's a little different than most magic books. What is it, and what can people expect from it?
So we talked earlier about the various shows we do, and one of our shows is called Parlor Tricks, and it's a 90-minute, 2-half evening show, and the entire show is in a book.
Scripts, methods, and
we've done it in order, so we've laid out in order, and every trick has the script and the methods and performance notes and all this kind of stuff with it.
And an essay. There's an essay that goes with each trick that picks up on a particular idea of magic that is exemplified in the trick, and there's a link to a video of the entire show filmed in front of a genuine audience, in that we just booked into a theatre, the audience paid for tickets, they didn't know it was going to be filmed until they turned up and there's notices on the door saying, by the way, this is going to be filmed. And then we filmed it, warts and all, so when you watch the video...
Yeah, there are some mistakes in the video. There are bits we do wrong.
And because it's a real show.
Yeah.
And it's like it's been out at the session, it's been out at Magifest, it's been out at Blackpool, and so there are about 150 copies in the wild at the moment, and we get a lot of feedback from it saying that people really like the thinking.
And also there's something, because we've laid it out in the order of the show, there are things that we set up in our show that we're going to pay off later in the show, or things that we do that either deliberately reference or are informed by things that have come before them. So the fact that in our show, the first 2 volunteers we get on stage both leave with an impossible object, or an object that's something magical happen to it as a gift, that's a very deliberate decision. But if we taught those tricks independently from each other, or just taught them as a series of tricks, I can't then say, well, what I'm doing here is I'm teaching the audience that if you come on stage with us, I'm going to literally give you a really nice thing. I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm going to look after you and give you an amazing thing. But to do that, I need to be able to say, you have seen the show and you've seen the order the tricks come in. think about the audience's mindset at this point in the show. Or I can say, this trick here, sure, it's not the best trick in the show in terms of you couldn't open on it, you couldn't close on it, but where it sits in the middle of the second half, this is the role that it performs within the show. And it's a funny routine, it's thing, and it's a tonal difference, and it's a pace difference. And we can talk about not only the construction of the tricks themselves, but the construction of the show as an entirety. Because so often, I think, books about stage magic have a bunch of stage tricks, and then the bit on putting a show together is book a hall and learn 8 tricks and do them in order and see what happens. And that's fine, but if you want a deeper cut than that, if you want all the work and decisions that have gone into every part of our show and every aspect of our show, and why we do everything the way we do it, and why tricks are in certain places and do certain things, and all that kind of stuff, I want to have that laid out as a case study. Often, what's more interesting than what a magician does or what their tricks do or how the tricks work is just why they did them. I'm way more interested to know in Darren's first show why they did the seance, or in Copperfield's show why they did it. I'm more interested in that than how it was done.
I'm very interested to why the alien thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Wouldn't you love to be in the room when they had that discussion? And that's what we're trying to do with parlor tricks, is being like, it's like putting you in the room when these tricks were written and when these decisions were made. So you don't just see the tricks and how they're done and our thinking behind them. You don't just see our thinking behind the performance of those tricks. You literally see our thinking in going, this is how this trick made it to the stage, or this is why we do that and why we don't do that with it,
In many ways, you can be in the room where it happened.
Exactly.
One of my friends in Toronto got a chance to pick up the book at Magi Fest before it sold out. And not only is it exactly what you're saying, a real in-depth case study, and just flipping through it, you can see, but it's also a gorgeous darn book to have on your shelf.
Oh, it's lovely. I mean, we can take no credit for that. That is all the good work of the people of Vanishing Ink and Andy and George and stuff. But yes, it is a very attractive tome.
Yeah, it looks lovely.
Awesome. And can you speak briefly about, or not briefly, I don't care, about the Decoded DVD set as well?
There's a DVD set out there, which is mostly downloads, I think, these days, called Decoded. The first half is simple coding tricks that we often get people saying they've taught it to their grandchild and they do it at family things and they really enjoy it. And then the second half is all about the coin act that we do and kind of how to do a very specific detailed code act. The big thing about it is that when we do the explanations, much like a show, we're just having fun.
We're having fun. We wanted the video, the video or the DVD or whatever to be fun.
There you go. There's an answer. Something I don't like in modern magic is when you watch an explanation video and it's dull and up itself
really
and dry.
po-faced, just really and they're trying to sell you on how important it is that these self-working card tricks.
It's not important.
It's not important. It's magic. But yeah. So it's a really fun thing to watch, and we've had several people say to us, I sometimes just watch it because it's fun. Not because I need to learn the stuff again. It's just fun to watch you guys talk. Or people that say, I watched it with my partner, as in life partner, not magic partner. And she was like, oh, we can carry on watching this. It's very entertaining. And we run the whole gamut of coding from stuff that's so easy you can learn it the second you've seen how it's done, all the way up to stuff that has taken us a whole career to do.
And I will say, just on that note of fun, that you guys were a bundle of fun and a breath of fresh air to watch lecture. It was just entertaining as well. It was fun. You got out of costumes, but you didn't stop the playing off each other on stage and having fun. And I think that's part of it, is magic being, this whole process being fun and not...
Exactly. I don't see what, we're meant to be performers, and performers are meant to be able to perform on stage. So why, when you're out of it, just because you're doing a lecture, you should still be a good performer.
Yeah. If you can't have fun doing it, what's the point?
Yeah.
It doesn't pay well not to have fun.
On that note of plugs and products and things like that, where can people follow you and find you on the internet?
The usual places, at Morgan Magic, at West Magic, that's the Twitter.
On Instagram, we are at Morgan and West.
On Facebook, I think we're just Morgan and West. LinkedIn doesn't exist. Evo doesn't exist. MySpace doesn't exist.
Our website is www.morganandwest.co.uk.
And postal address is Morgan and West, Great Britain.
Yeah, that'll get to us.
And I will say, just if you live somewhere in the area, it's worth just seeing if you're touring through town, because you guys are going through quite a lot of towns. We
are everywhere at the moment. So morganandwest.co.uk, it's got all of our live dates. And we're doing all of the regional theatres in the UK at some point over the next year and a half.
Oh, yeah. And as I mentioned, if there are musicians out there that want to know what it's like being a touring act and doing the kind of work we do, our Instagram is basically just all the venues we go to.
Yeah.
because we can't think of anything else to put on it.
Yeah, the Twitter we're less active on, Facebook we're less active on, but and also like our website's got contact details. You can basically get hold of us by
We're not hard to find.
just shouting in the street and turn up,
Morgan, what? And the last thing is the take-home point. So people have been listening to us talk about magic and character and theater and scripting and duo acts and all of this for quite a while now. If there is one thing that if people think back to this episode, they take just one thing back with them, what would that, or I guess two things, what would those things be?
Know and understand what decisions you are making and why you are making them. Don't just make them for the sake of making them.
And the way of getting good at something is by doing specifically that thing.
Yeah.
With that, thank you guys so much for this. This was an amazing episode and lots of details, knowledge, and so much to work on and chew on and think about. So sincerely, thank you guys for joining me. And of course, a big thank you to everybody at home who listened in on another episode, learned a thing or two, and is going to put this into action. We will see you all next Thursday. Peace. Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. Remember that just sitting around and listening to podcast episodes literally does nothing. You have to put it into action. You have to make it happen. What does that mean? Take one of the pieces of advice, the wisdom, the knowledge, the take-home points, anything from Morgan and West, and put it into action. Give it a whirl. The one that really stuck out for me was that thought about making decisions and justifying those decisions. The amount of times that you ask yourself why in your magic will really help it become better. So there you go. I hope you like it. Hope you learned something. Put it into action. Thanks for being here. Spread the word. Tell a friend. See you Thursday. Peace.